Oh no, this is going to turn into an unfocused mess of a harem anime, isn't it? Cold opener for this one was a flashback to a younger Aiko at the beach with both of her parents. Wow, I can already tell this is gonna be a rough one to get through. Sure enough, the episode proper opened with Aiko opening her day with a manzai routine with her father. Oh, good old Toei with their blatant as all hell stereotyping. Understandably, her mother wasn't exactly into their routine. Yeah, no point in hiding it. This lady was obviously Aiko's mom, Atsuko, who proceeded to follow her daughter all the way to school. You know, if this were the other parent, we would be hearing sirens by now. Also, shouldn't Aiko have been able to see her from this angle? She's not exactly going to get lost amongst these little shrimps. Ultimately, Atsuko couldn't work up the courage to see her daughter, so instead, she tried to get one of her classmates to deliver a message for her, which turned out to be one of the Stooges. Needless to say, this didn't exactly work out, and he forgot to deliver her letter. He did eventually remember well after school, and unfortunately, after Atsuko needed to head back to Osaka for the day. Still, I'll give him this. It was an innocent mistake. It's not as though he knew it was that important of a letter, and he even apologized for being late on the delivery. That, combined with Aiko's raw emotion displayed here, made for a really good dramatic scene, which is just going to be a taste of what's to come. But yeah, Aiko obviously really wanted to see her mother, and thus tried to run to the train station. Pretty sure she could get there faster by broom, but I'm willing to overlook it as she's clearly in a panic. Unfortunately, she didn't make it in time, with her mother only leaving behind a message on a nearby whiteboard, apologizing to her daughter, believing that she didn't want to see her. I hope all of you have strong stomachs, because this episode has more gut punches in it than a UFC match. Okay, that legit kind of hurt. Probably shouldn't have won the ring. One more thing her letter mentioned was the fact that Atsuko had sent many letters to her daughter, but her father likely hid them from her. Sure enough, he did exactly that, though at least he saved them, likely wanting to give it to his daughter at the right time. Regardless, Aiko was understandably upset they tried to hide this all from her, and then the episode made a bit of a tonal shift to some more comedic bits. Okay, I'm usually not against goofier moments in the show, but after a scene like that, these exaggerated faces plus the comedy music does give me a little bit of whiplash. Also, dude, shouldn't you be kind of used to this by now? Yeah, it's a little odd that they made no reference to the last time Aiko ran away from home, in particular when she couldn't figure out where to run away to, even though she went straight to Hazuki's the last time. Not really a big negative or anything, I just think it would have been nice if they included a line like, I don't want to have to bother Hazuki's family again. I just appreciate those little bits of continuity is all I'm saying. Another reason I guess they didn't go with Hazuki this time was because they needed an actual mother figure for this story, and this lady has barely been in the show at all. Thus, Mrs. Harukaze invited her to her home. With that, Aiko was able to tell Doremi more about her backstory, starting with that was just a little warning for all of you. As it turned out, when she was younger, both her parents were busy with their respective jobs, so Aiko ended up playing on Park's jungle gym alone and suffered an accidental fall from it. Naturally, this led to a blame game between the parents and the eventual divorce between the two. The mother was initially going to take custody of Aiko, but ultimately she chose to stay with her father, and Atsuko gave them her blessing. Excuse me, I need to go get my heart medicine. Okay, so let's break down this scene a little, shall we? Obviously, yes, this is an incredible tearjerker. You don't need me to tell you that. Seeing any parents fight is difficult to watch, especially if you've ever experienced it yourself. And while Yoshihiro Oka's direction hasn't been anything spectacular up until this point, again, I questioned that earlier scene, I do really like this spotlight scene of Aiko and her mother before she ran back to her father. It's a good usage of colors and lighting for emphasis on all of the characters in play. We even got this really good, subtle bit of visual storytelling with Atsuko pausing just for a second. More on this in just a bit, but as for the actual story behind it, it is very realistic, with of course the child blaming themselves for the parents splitting. The thing is though, in situations like this, it's really nobody's fault. From Aiko's perspective, her fall from the jungle gym was the main cause of the divorce, even though 9 times out of 10, incidents like this are at best only a small part of a whole bunch of underlying reasons why a couple divorces. This brief shot of Atsuko even seems to imply there's a lot more to it than this. Regardless, in situations like this, it's difficult for everyone, so I do hope that anyone who ends up in this sort of unfortunate situation doesn't blame anyone, especially themselves. Oh boy, that got heavy. Okay, show, please, give me something to make a Wade come back with. Thank you. What took you guys so long to come up with that, huh? Yes, in order to see Aiko's mother, the Ojamajo decided to skip the train and instead use their frequent broom miles. Not that it stopped Aiko's dad from coming to that conclusion, though at least he was right in that they were going to Osaka. Thus, he tried to catch up with them in his taxi. Oh, so that's why I didn't make it to the airport on time. Meanwhile, the Ojamajo realized they had no idea where Atsuko worked other than that it was a retirement home. Thus, they turned to the magical stage, and as usual, it provided them with a very roundabout solution, with them just happening to meet with an old lady who was going to the home while they sat on a bench it just provided.
Honey,
Oh, my daddy! Honey, daddy.
Naturally, they found her, and like mother, like daughter, Aiko couldn't bring herself to meet her. Though in her case, we could tell exactly why, as she thought about her father and how she might end up leaving him because of this. It was yet another excellent sequence that was expressed mostly through visuals, and only a little bit of choice dialogue, showing that while hiding the truth from her was wrong, Aiko still really loved her father and recognized that he was at least looking out for her. Thus, she purposely tried to delay seeing her mother by showing her friends around the city. Pity they didn't arrive a month earlier, or else they could have gone to Super Nintendo World. That place looks awesome. But yeah, after clearly not being all that bothered by the fact that she just barely missed her mother coming off of work, her friends insisted they go see her at her apartment, and they found her with a little baby. Oof. This led to, honestly, one of the saddest lines in the episode that was kind of quickly forgotten about as soon as Doremi and Hazuki overreacted. I mean, what else could they do to spoil this moment?
この忙しい時に風邪なんかひくもんやからどんならんわうちの嫁はん。ほな。
Well, I haven't done this in a while. Yeah, I'll bring this more up in just a bit, but really, did we have to end on a sitcom misunderstanding? Thankfully, it was somewhat made up for with a sweet reunion between the father and daughter. And Aiko ended things by basically saying that she'd stay by her father's side. This was an Aiko episode written by the head writer. Did you expect it not to be good? I mean, yeah, there was a little tonal inconsistency here and there, but at the same time, that just kind of highlights how good the drama was here. In that sense, you could say they did a really good job building up this conflict between Aiko and her parents. It was a great episode that further highlighted Aiko's character, while also giving us a good depiction of a divorced couple. For a magical girl show, there was little actual magic in this episode, which I think worked out for the better, because as a result, we were able to focus more on the drama of Aiko's complicated family life. Again, I really like how they showed that there are definite nuances to all divorces. Everyone ends up grieving and coping in their own way, and I think this episode was trying to get across the message that children really shouldn't feel guilty as a result. Parents can just drift apart for various reasons, which this episode did a great job getting across with some good subtle storytelling, which could be found throughout this episode with characters' minor actions like Aiko's hints that she wants to stay with her father. It got across her inner conflict quite well, and how she ultimately came to her final choice. My only minor issues with this one was a slightly inconsistent tone. While trying to lighten things up after learning about her backstory made sense, I do kind of wish they took other stuff like Aiko running away from home for the second time a little more seriously. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the misunderstanding ending, as it just feels like a cheap way to wrap things up for now. Yeah, it's pretty obvious that they're going to bring Atsuko back at some point, and while I am definitely looking forward to that, let's try not to end things like this again. Still, an excellent episode with some great storytelling, and yeah. Right now, I'm slowly working on part 3 of my Gold Prince review while I'm moving out. If anything, this extra time is letting me really collect all of my thoughts, as this is the part of the series where I probably do really need to analyze it just as, if not more, than the final quarter of the series. Still look forward to it. Until then though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I need to call my doctor to see if he can up my prescription. Oh boy.